Hi guys, thanks for joining me today. This is my new crime channel and welcome to all of you new subscribers, and for those who have also come over from my sister site, Divinevisions Readings, which incorporates love readings, angel guidance, healing videos, you name it. So if you're into that stuff, under my channel tab here you'll see my other channel. Anyway, let's get to it. This is the crime readings that I do, also case analysis, spirit sessions, tarot readings, you name it. So thank you for those who are supporting that. If you're not into that, that's fine. You might still get something out of this video because I do tend to, as a criminologist as well, look into stats, empirical research, that kind of stuff as well, guys. So there's always something new to learn from these channels, and I find that it's always good to get a new angle on things as well, and I love hearing what you guys have to say, whether it be your idea on something, you know, your opinion, or just some fact that you have obtained over time that I have no idea about. So we're all learning on this journey. We're all trying to find this mother effer. I don't normally swear like that, but yes, he is a mofo. So today I'd like to look at the criminal profile of this guy with as much information that I have already, as well as the psychic profile, because all of us in some way are psychic. We all have an intuition, we all have a gut feeling, a sudden instinct, okay, about something. So go back in time right now in your mind, okay, look at the photo of BG, okay, here, and just remember the first time you ever saw this photo. What was your initial impression? What was your instinct on this? You know, when you look at it, you think, okay, he's obviously not afraid of heights. He's on the bridge. He's being filmed. And he has a certain gait, a certain walk. He obviously wears jeans and boots or black shoes or brown shoes. He likes to wear a fanny pack or a deer kit, whatever that is. He has a hat on. It looks like a hoodie, perhaps, under a jacket. But on first impression, you look at this guy and how old do you think he is? What was your first impression? Because my first impression was that this guy was in his 50s. And that he kind of carries himself in some kind of way where he's got some kind of authority. Or he thinks he has. He looks heavy set, he's heavy up top, skinny legs. It looks like he could be carrying something in the jacket because it looks quite big and bulky. And when looking at the video, it looks like he's walking with a limp, or there's some issue with his leg or knee, or someone was saying something. But I think it could also be that it's because of the bridge. It's got gaps in it, it's old. Was he trying to overstep gaps on the bridge? Another thing that I noticed, that a lot of you would have noticed, is that he puts his head down. His head's down, he's not looking at the girls. It's like he's trying to hide his face. Is it because they are known to him? One of them might recognize him. I think so. So I'm going to show you what my first initial impressions were. And these came to me in visions. They came to me in the initial impression when I first saw him, but they came to me in visions afterwards. And I actually sent this to the Abby and Libby tip. And I've got the email to prove it and show it to you here, of what I actually had written down. Now, it may not be fact. I'm not claiming it to be fact. But this is what I got from it. Okay? And I'd love to hear what you guys got from it when you very first saw this. Even if it was just a first impression. Or if it was further than that and you had some kind of criminal profile in your mind. Or maybe there's something you knew about the case that was like, well, that's him. Comment below. I'd love to know what you guys thought when you very first saw the photo and the video of this guy. So I'm not sure if you can read this very clearly. I can't zoom in, but it says that I sent this on the 1st of March 2017, 7:51 a.m. I've sent it to the Abby and Libby tip line, and I received these impressions on the 19th of February. So I was fairly new to the case, as a lot of people would have been. But this is what I got from the man's description, okay? I got that he smoked Camel cigarettes. He wears steel-capped boots or hiking boots or shoes. He's got a goatee or a short beard. And I saw that he had a twitch in his right eye. I saw that he goes fishing and hunting and was wearing a cap or hat with either a deer or a stag, because I could see clearly the antlers and words for a fishing hunting store. That's what it looked like. Or it could have been a brand name, I'm not sure. There are hills, so there might be hills where he is on his property, and I could see there's cars that he might do up on his property. And he goes to the area often, so he knows it well. So I see that he offered the girls some beef jerky. Of all things, it's so random, but that's what I saw. It's so weird. So maybe he eats it. Maybe he buys it. He likes it. Maybe he makes his own. Who knows, if he's a hunter. And I could see that he smelled of alcohol and cigarettes when he approached the girls. So sometimes with psychic impressions, you don't just see things visually, but you also feel a gut instinct in your gut, and you can also smell things that just suddenly come to you as well. I got the name Wally for some reason and felt a link to family somehow, whether he knows their uncle, not sure, but another psychic and I got the word uncle around this. This could be linked to a family friend, also known as an uncle. I actually had a vision of him chewing on a toothpick, like it was hanging out of his mouth or similar. So whether he's chewing on a toothpick or tobacco, it was like it was like a toothpick because it was like hanging out of his mouth. Or similar, I don't know, but he was carrying a small hunting fishing knife on him. Now, we know further on that it might have been many more weapons than just one, but that's what I saw in a vision, was a small one. Maybe he carries that all the time, and that would be his MO, which is the modus operandi, which is the method of killing. It's something that they do as a pattern of behaviour, and I'm going to get into that further because it's so interesting about criminal behaviour. I saw a white car, and I saw a brown dog. So I feel like he's got a small to medium brown dog. And this is so random but so interesting how this came through. He wears a silver watch with a crack on its face. So this is what I got back in 2017. Whether he still owns one like that, I have no idea. Whether it's even fact, I have no idea. Until things are confirmed, I don't know. But this is what I had. In his late 50s to mid 60s, he used thin rope to tie up one of the girls' hands to a tree. He hit one of the girls who fought him off with a rock in the head, and that would make sense to me if they fought him initially. That if it was Libby who was fighting, a rock in the head would explain why there was no struggle or fight, during the crime. He said to the girls, "Hey girls, what are you two doing here on your own?" I hear them say exploring. They have wandered further down from him, and he is trying to look casual as he walks closer to them. At first conversation, they have felt something off about him, that he is weird, which is why they snapped the shot of him. And I put in brackets, this info was later confirmed in articles I read. So at the time I received the vision, I didn't even know that that's actually what happened. I just saw the video, but I hadn't actually read anything about them thinking he was creepy or anything like that. So he had then met up with them again and offered them beef jerky. So I feel like at the time he's actually trying to build some quick rapport with them, making out that when he initially came upon them, he didn't want to come across as threatening right at that instant moment, because they might have screamed, they might have ran. At that instant, he had to make them feel safe. It could have been a matter of seconds, but he made them feel safe for that matter of seconds. Even though he's a menacing guy, he's a threatening guy, he would have quickly switched, of course, but it was that instant moment of trying to make them feel like, oh, this guy's okay. I saw a couple, a man and a woman, that were walking along the trail at least an hour before this guy showed up. I have no idea about people that were there or not there, or who was cleared as being there or not there. I don't have any idea about all that stuff. I saw he wears a gold wedding ring. So to me, that would mean he's married. Yes, I don't think men usually wear rings after they've divorced. Sometimes women do, I've noticed, but I don't know if men do. So it tells me he was married. And I saw the name Lenny stood out, which could be short for Leonard. Someone in the community has recognised his picture or voice, but is not stepping forward. Now, the other thing I just realised was that I actually had seen a weatherboard home. It wasn't a brick home or anything like that. I saw a weatherboard. It was white and it had lots of trees around it, maybe even overgrown trees around it. And I kind of got the impression that he didn't live that far from the property. From Ron's property or the area where it was, okay? Now we're going to get into the criminal behaviour and what I've learned about crime scenes that are staged, and also, POI. I mean, who does this kind of fit for you? If this is correct information, or if the majority of this is correct, from the profiles that you know and the POIs, there might be someone I'm not aware of. If this does fit, with these psychic impressions somehow, who do you know that this could actually tie to? Because I'm really interested, because I don't know all the POIs. I don't know if some have been cleared and who hasn't. I know some of them, but not all of them. And as we can see, in 2017, there was the older looking guy, the sketch that came out with an older looking guy. He had the cap and the jacket, right, in the actual sketch. Now, in 2019, 2 years later, the LE have shifted their direction, okay? So basically, they're saying, scrap the first sketch, we're now looking at a younger dude, between years of 18 and 40. So people are like, what? How the hell can you just make such a drastic change like that? This guy on the bridge looks nothing like an 18-year-old guy, maybe 40, but he doesn't look anything like 18 to me. Yes, it can be maybe easy for old guys to maybe have a young face, but I've never seen a young dude like 18 look like a middle-aged guy. Show me that if you've ever seen it. So we know now that the crime scene was staged. What does that mean? A staged crime scene actually means there's two purposes for that, okay? What it means is that the offender is trying to steer the investigation away from themselves. They might be trying to frame someone else. They might place evidence there that doesn't kind of fit with the crime scene. They might take things away from the evidence, from the scene, sorry. So they manipulate the evidence. Most cases, there's very common cases of crime scenes that were homicides made to look like a suicide. Sometimes a crime scene will just be of a violent nature, but they'll try and make it out to look like a sexual assault. Sometimes if it's a husband that's killed his wife, he might stage it to look like a robbery that's gone wrong. Sexually motivated violent homicides can be staged as being an autoerotic asphyxiation, in other words, sex act gone wrong, which is what Garrett Kurtz confessed to when he killed Ray Hainish in March 2019, I think it was. He had actually confessed that he had staged the crime scene to look like a sex act gone wrong, when in actual fact he's murdered the poor guy. He's murdered this guy, and he was targeted. And interestingly enough, there were text messages where they were both discussing consent for that. And I'm wondering if he's clever enough to have manipulated that in the very beginning, staging already through that it's already been set up to look like it was a sex act gone wrong. Some studies have shown that staged crime scenes are always done by an offender who has known the victim. Okay, so it's usually an intimate partner or it's an acquaintance of the victim. So in this case with the Delphi daughters, Bridge Guy knew at least one of those girls. Crime scenes that are staged to look like a rape when there's been no sexual assault is usually by perpetrators known to the victim, and they will leave their victim partially nude and covered up. So the involvement of a third party is usually involved. It's usually those who discover the victim, so the offender will manipulate the situation so that a family neighbour, the family neighbour or a family friend or a friend might find the victims. So did the offender in this case leave the girls there in the open for Ron to find, seeing as they were on his property? Does the guy know Ron? That's something to consider here. Did the offender lead people to that area to search? That's something else to consider. Did the offender try to frame Ron? Was there evidence left at the scene? Was the fact that their bodies were placed on Ron's property a way of steering the investigation away from the suspect and make it look like Ron did it? So according to Jason Roach, Robin Bryant, 2015, Older teens are at a higher risk of being killed by an acquaintance or a stranger, mirroring adult homicides, which can be related to feuds, arguments, or sexually motivated crimes here. And they are usually killed by sharp weapons or kicking or beating. Now, Abby and Libby were mid-teens, okay? They were, very young teens, but they do kind of fit the profile of the older teens here, because the mid-teens are usually at a very low risk of being killed by somebody that is an acquaintance. It's usually a family member. So what's interesting is that the killer will attempt to steer the investigation away from themselves by either being overly cooperative or extremely distraught. They usually inject themselves into investigations by turning up as part of the search party. They will get in front of the media and be on the news. They like the attention. They'll be interviewed. They also will seek information by being in contact with the victim's family or those close to the victim. So at a crime scene, detectives will try and ascertain offender-victim interaction. They'll look at the body disposition, and they will try and find other things like methods of entry. They'll be able to see whether this is a disorganised crime or an organised crime. And sometimes there's a mix, and when there's a mixture of disorganisation or organisation, it can represent that there's more than one offender present. So an organised offender will plan and premeditate their crime. They like to take control of themselves as well as their victim. They have social and interpersonal skills, so they know how to deal with the victim verbally. So they will come across as maybe conning the victim. They usually select victims to fit a personal criteria. So if this was a catfishing situation, maybe that's his MO. So MO stands for modus operandi, and it shows a distinct pattern of criminal behaviour. So for instance, a perpetrator might take a particular weapon with them to the crime scene. They might use specific gloves. They might have a certain way of luring victims. So for instance, Ted Bundy's MO was to approach young pretty women, and he'd play on their empathy, and that would be by placing his arm in a sling and asking them to carry books for him. Another example of an MO is Ivan Milat in Australia, who was a serial killer of backpackers, and he would lure them into his van by appearing really kind, I'm going to give you a lift here, and then he'd go and abduct them and take them into the forest and kill them. And it can show methods of control. So it could be that, the MO is to tie them with a specific type of rope. And also the MO can alter in time. So they can change it. Some of them, as they develop more experience, might think, okay, the rope's not working for me, I want to change to handcuffs now. So patterns of offending can change over time. However, a signature stays the same. And not every killer uses a signature, which was interesting for this particular crime, this homicide or double homicide with Abby and Libby, is that not only was the crime scene staged, but there was a signature and a souvenir taken. So a signature is basically a calling card. It is something that the offender needs to do. It's a psychological, emotional, personal need for them to receive gratification through performing a ritual, and they're able to make it personal by playing out their fantasies on the victim. So the crime itself is not satisfying enough for the actual perpetrator. There's like a need to leave their mark. A signature can be anything from excessive assault, which is overkill, mutilation, dismemberment, and specific rituals such as making a victim shower themselves after a sexual assault. But there's a classic example with Ted Bundy in terms of homicide signatures. He would actually take the corpse home, sometimes just the head, okay? And he would shampoo the hair, he would sleep with the victim, he would do other things post-mortem, which I'm not going to get into, but you can imagine. So yes, there's many different things he would do which were his signature. And the Zodiac Killer, he would leave a circle with a cross running through it as his signature. There can be verbal signatures as well, such as vulgar or abusive language. They might prepare a script for the victim to repeat. So in other words, if they're assaulting a victim, They might say to them, tell me you enjoy this, or say this or say that. And a signature is consistent. It's been said that they never change because it is something already ingrained in the psyche of the offender. So it goes back to fantasies. They're usually long-term fantasies that have been developing over time that eventually are acted out upon. So it is a very definite, it's a psychological, emotional thing within them. Detectives, in the case of Abby and Libby, stated that there was a souvenir taken from the scene. So a souvenir is different to a trophy, apparently. A trophy is something that is taken from the scene as a way of the offender relating some kind of triumph over the victim. So it's control related. They get a buzz out of it that they have basically conquered this victim. So it could be something as in photos, videos, it might be like torn garments, whereas a souvenir is a meaningful item. So it's taken so that the offender will remember the incident. So it reminds them of the pleasure they gained from the crime. So this could be jewelry, or, they did say an article of clothing was taken from one of the girls. So it could be that. 20 active and retired law enforcement officers conducted a survey regarding staged crime scenes that they had attended. Collectively, there was 903 between them. It averaged out to about 45 cases per officer. So of the 903 staged crimes, 411 dealt with staging of death scenes. So together they had 560 cumulative years of law enforcement experience, averaging 28 years per officer. And collectively, they had either investigated or consulted on 33,630 violent crimes, averaging about 1,682 crimes per officer. 19 of the 20 officers that were investigating staged scenes involving fatalities stated that the staging offender is most commonly white and male. 85% reported that the offender was or had been an intimate partner of the crime. That's 17 of the 20 officers. 2 of the 20 officers, 10%, advised that the offender was an acquaintance. And 1 officer out of the 20, 5%, reported the offender as other. 13 of the 20 officers stated an age range between 26 and 35, and 5 of the officers, 25%, stated that they were most commonly between 36 and 45 years old. And 2 officers, 10%, advised that 21 to 25 was the most common age of the staging offender. So in other words, when we put it all together, the age range would be most commonly between 21 and 45. It interests me that the age range of the offender that Doug Carter and his crew had revealed was, that sketch they brought out, they had said was between the ages of 18 and 40. Could there be more than one person involved? Doug Carter had actually stated that this offender wanted power and control over the girls, meaning that the perpetrator wanted control and dominance over the girls. They receive satisfaction out of making their victims feel helpless and making the offender feel invincible, making him feel that he's in control of the situation. So the motive isn't always sexual. That's not the primary motive in this. It's interesting to note too that it's been stated that as an aggressor's age increases, there is a greater tendency to use bladed weapons and blunt objects. Whereas men are mostly likely to use guns as their weapon, women may smother or suffocate the victim, especially in child homicides here. So it makes sense if Abby and Libby had lost a lot of blood that there was some kind of sharp weapon used, and maybe the reason why they didn't struggle or fight was because there was either a kicking, beating, or blunt object used. So studies have shown that serial killers or killers that have the need to control or dominate their victim are usually people who have experienced childhood humiliation. So we're looking in terms of Bridge Guide's profile. He may have had a childhood where there was abandonment, loneliness, abuse, He might have had a low self-esteem. He could have been physically, emotionally, or sexually abused. He might have been adopted. He might have been neglected. He might have been incapable of forming human attachment in childhood, which results in insecurity. Now, children who have been abused in those ways are 3 times more likely than non-abused adults to act out extreme violence or aggression. And the loneliness links to motivation to control victims, that insecurity. So because they've been in an insecure situation in their life where they haven't been able to control their own environment or have someone else who's domineering in their life, like a domineering mother or something like that, they may actually develop antisocial personality disorder, narcissistic personality disorder, or borderline personality disorder. So serial killers are manipulative, charming and deceitful, impulsive, and lack empathy. And as children, they can develop fantasies relating to themes around control and domination. Because of that insecurity, having someone else abuse them, it can lead to sexual violence that stems from sexual and aggressive fantasies. And then they may, then eventually they act on them. And a lot of serial killers have histories of animal torture, cruelty, and killings as well. Not every one of them, but a lot of them do. So there's lots to consider here. Is BG able to hold a steady job and relationships, intimate relationships, marriages, that kind of thing? Has he been unemployed or homeless? So there could be a mixture of things. It can mix in and blend in too. That is the complex thing about all of this, is trying to tease it all out and say what kind of profile he fits the most. Usually those who are organised and plan methodically can hold a steady job. They can be in marriages. We've seen many serial killers, they have a wife and children and are able to blend into society, and they seem to be a respectable citizen. So they can very much wear that mask and blend in. It has been stated that Bridge Guy may be someone who works with children or has children because he used the term guys. When he said guys to the girls, guys down the hill, usually people talk to kids like that, like, guys, come on guys, that kind of thing. So is he someone who is a teacher? Is he someone who knows the family? Is he a father? Or is he a younger dude who, usually a term that younger people may use as well. So based on everything we've learned today and the studies and the research that has been done, we know that it's been confirmed that it was a staged crime scene. And according to the studies, that means that he is a white male who knows the girls, possibly between the ages of 21 to 45. Doesn't have to be. I think it's still someone who's older, but I actually think there's more than one involved. And this guy wants control and domination and power. He is methodical, he is manipulative, he verbally approached the girls, most likely using interpersonal and social skills. He took a souvenir to remind himself of the pleasure he gained from the crime. He may have injected himself into the investigation. So you've got to look out for people who may have been part of the search party, may have been there when police were investigating somehow, somewhere, may have been on the news somewhere, most likely went to the conference. And that's why Doug Carter says you may even be in this room right now, because he knows the profile of the killer based on the crime scene, based on the fact that it was staged, based on the fact that power and control and dominance was a driving factor in this crime. When Doug Carter addressed the offender in his conference, he stated that he believed that the offender had a small amount of a conscience left. And what would those close to him think about him? Now, I think Doug Carter was playing on that, okay, because if it's true that Abby or Libby was partially covered, that can, as part of staging, represent someone who is embarrassed or ashamed of their act. And usually when that occurs, the offender knows the victim. So what do you guys reckon? Do you think this was planned based on everything we've heard, or just even by your own ideas on this? Do you believe this was a planned crime? Do you believe he's organised? Do you believe he might have a family? Do you believe he knows the girls? What do you think the motive is, or was? Has he done this before? And how did he know the girls were going to be there? How did he know that no one was going to be around to witness the crime? Did he have others as lookouts? Did he have someone else holding the girls down? What kind of control method did he use to keep 2 girls contained? Did he use a gun as a threat? Did he use manipulation in terms of saying, if you don't do this, I'll kill your mother? Because it's a verbal interaction going on here with this one, I believe. He's already talked to them, guys down the hill, I reckon there's other things said. How did he know they were going to be there? Did he overhear a conversation? Was he catfishing them? Was he meant to meet up with them? Or if more than one perpetrator, did somebody else catfish the girls and BG knew they were going to be there? Could this have been a link to the Anthony Shots profile and the Dropbox account that apparently had links going to so many different people in a porn ring? Was BG one of those people that had information that the girls would be there? Does he know the family and somehow through word of mouth knew they were going to be there? Did the girls post something on Snapchat to show they were there, or that they were going to be there? There's many ways to look at it. This guy had personal information. He had direct information somehow. He gained it somehow to know those girls were there. This was not an opportunistic random killing. This was planned and premeditated and staged, and souvenirs were taken. Okay, and in my opinion, this was a thoroughly planned out, personal, brutal crime against these 2 young girls, perpetrated by one or more individuals who were either intimately connected or acquainted with one or both of the girls.